Let's end it here. Let me just say one more thing.
Because we
play that
go
clip?
ahead.
When we inevitably get dragged into this war, when we inevitably end up spending tens of billions, if not hundreds of billions, if not a trillion, depending on how long that war with Iran lasts, will you guys come back on this show and at least admit I was right?
Absolutely.
Well, I said that on Her Take about 8 months ago, and guess what? I was right. But I'm not sharing that with you simply to brag about how right I was. We're now in the third week of this unnecessary war against Iran, and it's already costing American taxpayers literally billions of dollars. And as I said in the video you just watched, this mess could ultimately end up costing us trillions of dollars, and we're already $40 trillion in debt. How is this beneficial to the American people in any way, shape, or form? Well, last Thursday, the Pentagon announced that it spent about $11.3 billion on the war in Iran in just the first week. In 1 week. In 1 week. By the way, all those people who got kicked off of the Medicaid system because our Congress decided to cut $1 trillion in funding to Medicaid. How do you feel about the fact that we spent $11.3 billion on the war in just 1 week? We don't hate our government enough. Let me just be clear about that. I should also note that the director of National Economic Council, Kevin Hassett, actually corrected the number to closer to $12 billion in that first week. Great. But disastrously, it appears that President Donald Trump not only underestimated Iran's military capability and resolve, but he also underestimated just how much this war would end up costing the American people. So The Intercept put out this fantastic report. I highly recommend you read the whole thing, but for the purposes of saving time, I'll read you the relevant excerpts. So Young Turks over at The Intercept writes that initial estimates of the first 100 hours of the war tacked on $3.7 billion in operational costs, munitions, and damaged or destroyed equipment, according to a cost breakdown by the Center for Strategic and International Studies, or CSIS. This and other estimates turned out to be drastic undercounts, as Pentagon officials in classified briefings disclosed that the military burned through $5.6 billion worth of munitions in just the first 2 days of the war. The Center for Strategic and International Studies, they're the ones who advised the Trump administration on how much this war would cost us. Fascinating. We should look into that organization. So it's a bipartisan nonprofit org. Okay, so far so good. No problems with that. Since it's a nonprofit, they have to do financial filings, which I love. I love financial filings. Oh, I jump in it all day, every day. All right. And so I looked at their financial filings. 2023 is the most recent financial filing they have available. And it turns out that the chairman of this organization, the Center for Strategic and International Studies, happens to be Thomas Pritzker. Thomas Pritzker, where have I heard that name recently? Oh, that's right. The same Thomas Pritzker who had to step down as chair of the Hyatt board because of his relationship with Jeffrey Epstein, which we recently learned about after the Epstein files were released. Yeah, that guy. Jeffrey Epstein, the individual that was wheeling and dealing on behalf of Israel, that guy. Yeah. Anyway, let's move on. So the billionaire Thomas Pritzker has stepped down as executive chair of the hotel chain Hyatt after revelations over his ties with the late child sex offender, Jeffrey Epstein. Files released by the US Department of Justice showed that Pritzker was in regular contact with Epstein after his 2008 plea deal for procuring a minor for prostitution. So in other words, this scumbag is the chair of the very organization that severely underestimated the cost of this war that the United States is fighting on behalf of Israel. Oh, by the way, Leon Panetta is also a trustee of this organization. Yeah, these are the people advising our government. Anyway, let's get back to the real cost of this war. So take a look at this video from Al Jazeera that breaks down exactly how much is spent per day, just based on the CSIS numbers.
Item 1, operations. Keeping more than 200 fighter jets in the air, a fleet of warships at sea, and artillery on the ground. About $196 million. Most of it was already budgeted. The real cost was what this war machine fired. Item 2, munitions. Over 2,600 guided weapons launched in 100 hours. Missiles, precision bombs, drones. Replacing them cost $3.1 billion. Item 3, things that broke. 3 F-15 jets destroyed by friendly fire in Kuwait. The bill came in at $359 million. Add it all up, and it's $3.7 billion for 4 days of war. Of the $3.7 billion, only $178 million was in the Pentagon's budget. Everything else, no funding source. The Trump administration is running this war on a military credit card, and Congress hasn't seen the bill yet.
Now, remember, that video was based on data that was provided on the cost of this war by CSIS. It's an underestimate, severe underestimate, and they updated their analysis. They now estimate that Operation Epic Fury will cost the US a whopping, it did cost the US a whopping $16.5 billion by the 12th day of the war. And honestly, judging by the obvious pro-Israel bias of this organization, I wouldn't be surprised if that is an underestimate. Now, The Intercept spoke to experts in the costs of war, lawmakers experienced with the Pentagon budget, the same Pentagon that has failed every single audit, and 2 government officials briefed on Operation Epic Fury who did speak on condition of anonymity so they can speak freely. So a 3-week conflict could cost taxpayers between $60 billion and $130 billion, according to the 2 government officials who spoke on the condition of anonymity to speak freely, with both stressing that the estimates were speculative. It's a back of the napkin estimate, said one official. We are already, even before this war started, spending over $1 trillion to service our debt. This is money that we don't even have. This is just more debt that we're taking on. Like, know that.
Don't forget, Noble Mobile is saving you a ton of money. So a lot of people are signing up now and beginning to realize, what the hell, why am I paying so much to Verizon and AT&T? So your bill's only $50 a month, but it can actually be less because they give you money back if you don't use your data. So if you're paying more than $50, there's no reason to not switch. It's crazy not to switch because same phone, same number, same contacts, literally nothing changes. TYT.com/switch, TYT.com/switch. All right, we'll be right back.
A 5-week war could top out at $175 billion. 8 weeks could put the total at $250 billion. Quote, they really have no idea of the real cost, end quote, said one of the officials, noting that bookkeeping is not a Pentagon strong suit. And remember, this is the same Pentagon that Trump wants to increase the budget for from $1 trillion a year to $1.5 trillion a year. They haven't passed a single audit. Now, even though we're allegedly ahead of schedule, whatever the hell that means, according to the Trump administration and Kevin Hassett specifically, he still believes that this war is going to end in 4 to 6 weeks. I don't think so. In fact, Israel has just escalated this war by striking Iran's gas field. And as a result, Iran has retaliated, has already begun retaliating by hitting energy infrastructure in some of these Gulf countries. So things have only been escalating. Now, Trump made a series of miscalculations since the start of this war. And that's not just according to me, it's according to, who's that? Oh yeah, former US Army Major Harrison Mann. Take a look.
Nothing that Donald Trump imagined was gonna happen has come to pass. He thought it was going to be really an overnight success, like he views his regime change operation in Venezuela. In his personal experience, he thought he was going to do this a second time. Nobody who knows anything about Iran thought that was going to happen, though, and it's impossible to do a decapitation operation on a country with that cohesive a government and a regime. I think, to a certain extent, this war is going exactly the way that Netanyahu and other boosters of this war expected, which is they wanted to draw the United States into really a really long quagmire with the goal of collapsing or fracturing the Iranian state.
And guess what? As I've shared with you previously, but I'm gonna say it again, it's important for you to know what's going on with our country, our budget, our money. Jake Sherman over at Punchbowl News noted that the White House, Pentagon, and some congressional leaders are already discussing an additional supplemental funding bill for this war. Let me read you the relevant excerpts. We've had several sources suggest the package may carry a price tag of $100 billion or more. Lawmakers see this as potentially the last must-pass bill of the year and may try to attach their own costly proposals. Reconciliation, meaning passing this bill through a simple majority in the Senate, is probably the best option for the GOP leaders because there's no chance that Democrats would allow anything to pass without a vote on ending the conflict or reining in Trump's freedom to operate. But any new spending would have to be offset with cuts elsewhere. So in other words, if they want to pass a supplemental funding bill to the tune of $100 billion in order to continue funding this devastatingly stupid war, well, then Congress would need to cut $100 billion elsewhere in the budget. So we are paying taxes for what reason? When our services, things that benefit us, the American people, continuously gets cut and we spend more and more on the Pentagon, more and more on wars. And what makes it even worse, it'd be one thing if there was actually a threat to the United States and we had to spend the money to protect our borders, to protect our country. That is not what's happening here. We are going deeper and deeper into debt to fight Israel's war, to help them build their empire. That is the truth. That is the reality of the situation. So where are they going to cut that money or that funding from? Is it going to be food assistance? Is it going to be more Medicaid cuts? Medicare cuts? I don't know. I guess we're going to have to wait and see. But there are no brakes on this car until the American people rise up and say, enough, we're not doing this anymore. And as we talk about the cost of war, we also need to keep in mind how much more we will spend in the long term. So Linda Blimes, who's a former assistant secretary and chief financial officer of the US Department of Commerce, this was under Bill Clinton's administration, spoke to The Intercept and said this: enormous short-term expenses like spent munitions, the deployments of aircraft carriers, strike groups, and aircraft shot down will be eclipsed by even more significant expenditures like the long-term costs of veterans' benefits and interest on the debt to pay for the war. The ultimate cost, Blimes says, may reach into the trillions of dollars. Now, how the hell would she know that? Well, it turns out that Blimes first called attention to the immense hidden costs of America's wars in her analysis of the Iraq War, another war fought on behalf of Israel. The George W. Bush administration initially put the likely cost of the Iraq War at a measly $40 billion. By 2008, so literally just 5 years later, Blimes and economist Joseph Stiglitz discovered that the real cost would be at least $3 trillion. But even that was an underestimate. By 2021, that figure had ballooned to around $8 trillion. So as Ben Shapiro tries to propagandize Americans into believing that they're not worthy of Social Security benefits, it's going to be insolvent soon. God forbid we raise the Social Security tax cap and, keep that incredibly popular program intact. No, we need to do away with it because he's a fiscal conservative. He argued on CNN when I was on the panel that the reason why we're in debt overwhelmingly is due to Social Security. No. If you look at the maps, or at the graphs, I should say, of when the US started digging itself deeper and deeper and deeper into debt, trillions of dollars into debt, it started under the George W. Bush administration. You can't spend $8 trillion on a war on behalf of a foreign country and expect your economic health to be intact. It's that simple. Anyway, Blimes noted that there are currently 50,000 US troops deployed in the Middle East, the majority of whom are being exposed to toxins, burning oil, fumes, etc. I mean, not to forget about the mental toll of these types of deployments. as the US, Israel, and Iranian forces, strike these oil facilities, it is causing a toxic, situation in the air people are breathing. We can estimate that at least 1/3 will be claiming disability benefits under the PACT Act, she said, referring to, and this is Blimes again, referring to a landmark 2022 law expanding healthcare and benefits for our veterans exposed to burn pits, Agent Orange, and other toxic substances. Let me be very clear. Our veterans, our service members shouldn't be placed in this situation in the first place. But if they are, and since they are, they deserve any and all financial assistance if they get sick as they're forced to fight these wars, especially on behalf of a foreign country.
Every time you ring the bell below, an angel gets his wings. Totally not true, but it does keep you updated on our live shows.